Okay, in the future, excuse me, I'm sleeping. I just had to have a quick thought. You have a thing called, what is it called? Generation Alpha. Generation Alpha is going to be like the first, like, truly screened generation. When I say screen, smartphone, computer, very much ingrained. Those things are going to be very much ingrained in their consciousness, or their experience, I should say, their conscious experience. So we sit there and we see things like TechSnack. We see people that are, more high rates of depression associated with, being on TikTok all day or things like that. These young kids basically measuring their worth by what they see online, and we all know what we see online can be fake. I mean, literally, it could be a deep fake, something that's created by somebody that, is very advanced in technology, that's creating this fantasy for someone to live vicariously through. And what I was thinking of is sometimes I stand up for a spiritual religious practice. I'm not an atheist or a theist, but just because I stand up for the morality and the ethics found throughout those things, people might say, well, look at the conflict in the Middle East. That's because of religion, but really that's not. If you ever study like the history of it, a lot of it's just, in my opinion, somebody may say, well, how could it not be religious? They're fighting over Holy Land, but really now it's come to the point where like the religion is the scapegoat, the spiritual practice is the scapegoat, and the real thing behind everything is politics. It's materialism. It's basically this more petty type stuff rather than some biblical thing. But the biblical thing or the religious themes or the spiritual themes get shoved in the forefront because that makes good headline. Those things make good headlines. So anyways, I was thinking, like, if you took a machine, an AI or whatever, another form of advanced synthetic intelligence, and ran an algorithm on every single religious or spiritual text, and then compiled what has worth in it, I guarantee you, I bet my life on it, that thing is going to compile an awful lot of stuff. And even if it took one thing out, like the golden rule, that can still benefit people no matter who you are. But I guarantee you there's a lot of parables and tales and stories and just all sorts of stuff found throughout those texts that have a great amount of worth in them. I mean, think of just some of the stuff found in Eastern religions, some of just the simple sayings. I mean, they're timeless, they're priceless. A lot of them are even non-religious to the standpoint that, you could benefit from them if it was 100,000 years in the future. So the point is that I think if you took Generation Alpha, you don't want people from that age group, that demographic, growing up and being, living some deluded life. Some people point a finger at religion, talk about fantasy-prone reality, or if you're religious or spiritual, that you have a fantasy-prone mentality. But then you turn that around and you sit there and think, well, what is somebody doing that's, researching artificial intelligence and creating deep fakes and then living their life vicariously through other people's social media accounts? How's that not living vicariously? How's that not creating an even more fantasy-prone mentality? Because when you think about it, when it comes to like reading scripture or philosophical stuff that's Eastern or Western, spiritual traditions or religious traditions, you have to come up oftentimes with those stories, those things in your mind's eye, create the things as you see them. They're not on a computer screen created by someone else. So when you think about that, it's really like it's almost creating a more fantasy-prone mentality for a more, fake or a more falsified life to be into the current technology. So why I'm saying this is, with our ethics and things in life, I think we really have to be careful, what we're representing, and that's just something I wanted to say. We don't realize that. So it seems kind of like to sit there and say that religion and spiritual practice creates fantasy-prone mentalities. Well, what do you sit there and see when some girl is 14 years old and she wants to be like a pop star? She wants to get her breast, enhanced like some pop star, and then she does cocaine like some pop star, and then she becomes depressed and grabs a gun and blows her brains out or drinks bleach, like some of these horrible stories you read, because she's living a fantasy-prone mentality because it's been shoved down her face and literally told that it was normal. So, see, in a way, the internet or computers or social media, they're not bad, but again, it's actually almost worse than religious spiritual practice because it's creating, there's numerous stimuli. If someone says, oh, you're going to be like some goddess, well, I mean, that's there. When you go and read about this stuff, you still have to visualize stuff in your mind's eye because, it's ancient stuff. It's like if you go and look up on a computer and be like a pop star, there's a million people's opinions about that person, and most of them are very not so positive if you think about it. There's a lot of bad grammar, a lot of bad lingo. Some girl searching social media trying to be like some pop star, and there's a lot of stuff on there that's kind of dumbing people down. And then they're idolizing those people, and they think it's okay to be dumbed down. So then they're living this fantasy pro mentality that doesn't have the richness, the if you want to say the education, that what do you want to say? Excuse me, it's like 1, I have to go to sleep. But it doesn't have the richness of diversity of, let's say, grammar, dialect, vocabulary that is often found throughout spiritual religious stuff, writings. So when you think about that, it's almost like, you go on, she's idolizing some pop star. She goes on the pop star's page, and the pop star's page is, yo, fam, what's up, dog? I was out there doing da-da-da. And it's all very, like, broken English, some sort of, like, dialect that's very, chopped up and broken apart. There's no, like, very, some of the stuff that's found within it isn't very stimulating for their minds. So that's kind of like what I'm getting at. Like, to idolize a pop star is to live probably a worse fantasy pro mentality than to sit there and, to learn something from a religious spiritual tradition where somebody is, basically the story is about sacrifice or helping others or, being a good Samaritan. So we start putting things in context. I think if the AI ran an algorithm and all the spiritual and religious texts and compiled it and put it together, I think there'd be a lot of substance there that's of worth. And I don't think Generation Alpha should forsake, the things which come from the past for potentially present or current technologies, which could actually really harm them in the long run. And I'm not scared of the future. I'm not scared of AI. I'm not scared of, people, evolving away from spiritual religious practices. But what I'm getting at is we have to be really careful. We already see how much misinformation is spread about stuff just online. You have deep fake videos. That's old news. That's video back in the day when Obama was in office. He looked real on the video. He moved real. And I think it's been how many years since then? And technology advances incredibly fast. Supposedly it doubles in its ability to, what's the word? Increase its, computational capacity, if you want to call it that, of each year. It becomes more advanced each year. It doubles in advancement or advances in, I don't know, what are you trying to say? No, it's not Moore's Law. I was wrong when I said that the other day. There's actually another terminology for it. But that's the point of it. It's like, you have a chip that's 1 inch wide, and then next year it's a 1/2 inch wide, but it holds, double the information on it. So that's the point. You really want to be careful because it's kind of like, think of those Twitter bots that were on Twitter not long ago. And they were, after being on Twitter for a period of time, they started to pick up from the algorithm that it was okay to be racist to people. And so that's something, if a computer can pick that up, then of course a child's going to be able to pick that up. So when you start thinking about that, it's like you don't really see too much of that in a lot of spiritual religious tradition. So it's just a thought. I think you really have to be careful about the future generations. And, don't let people forget when there was good stuff in the past. Don't forsake the past, especially, remember the past mistakes. Because the past mistakes, if you don't remember them, we're going to create them in the present or the future. So anyway, just a thought.